My name is John Jossa, and I am an ACDH Council member. And thank you for taking some time from your busy schedules to join us tonight. Before we begin, I would like to take a minute to lead us through our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that what we call Alberta is the traditional and ancestral territory of many peoples, presently subject to Treaty 6, 7, and 8, namely the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Kainai, the Piikani, the Siksika peoples, the Cree, the Dene, the Saulteaux, the Nakota Sioux, and the Stoney Nakoda, and the Tsuut'ina, as well as the Métis peoples of Alberta. This includes the Métis settlements and the 6 regions of the Métis Nation of Alberta. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on or are visiting. Thank you. Now I think I will pass it over to Jody, our council chair, to present the welcome from council. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Hi, everybody. My name is Jody Sperber. I'm the chair of the ACDH Council. I just wanted to share a couple of quick thoughts with you before we pass it on to the team at the college. The past few years have been a very busy time for both the college and the council. Regulation in Alberta and across the country is changing rapidly, and council has been working closely with the college to respond to many changes to legislation and regulation in general. The composition of council has changed significantly when the government required all councils to have 50% public members. The ACDH is very fortunate to have 5 public members who bring a wealth of experience in governance, finance, and strategic oversight. Our public members contribute greatly to the discussions around the council table and provide us with the experiences and expectations of how they would like to receive care from registered dental hygienists in Alberta. Many of you have heard of Bill 46. This was new legislation that resulted in significant changes to the Health Professions Act and the regulations for all regulated health professions in Alberta. The result of these legislation changes provided the opportunity for the college to update our bylaws and modernize our standards of practice, code of ethics, and guidelines. The presentations tonight will review all of these changes and provide you with the information on how this affects you and your practice of dental hygiene. What you'll be hearing tonight is the culmination of 2 years of hard work and dedication to the modernization of regulation for dental hygienists in Alberta. Most of council is in attendance tonight as attendees, and we are looking forward to hearing your comments and questions throughout the evening. Amy, our registrar and CEO, will be leading us through the presentation, along with a few team members from the college who will introduce themselves along the way. So with that, I'll pass it off to you, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Thank you, John. We are going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we start. So I just wanted to let you know that as an attendee, you're muted and your cameras are off, and that is simply just to minimize interruptions throughout the evening. However, this presentation will be recorded, and we're going to be posting it on our ACDH YouTube channel. And so if you wanted to watch it again, or for anybody who's having issues logging on tonight and they want to watch it, it will be available. There is a Q&A button on the top of your screen. And so if you have questions throughout the presentation, please go ahead and type them in. And we will either respond to you privately, or we'll post your question live and respond to it. So everybody who is in attendance tonight can see the question as well. So that is the way that we can interact throughout the presentation. And there's no chat function. So the chat function is disabled. So the main function that to be used tonight is the Q&A. As well, we're going to have a live Q&A at the end of the presentation, and live meaning that, again, we're going to just open it up, and if you have any questions about anything in the presentation or anything else about the college, you'll have some time at the end to type your question in. If your question does not get answered tonight, just depending on how many come in, please email info@acdh.ca and we'll try to respond to it as quickly as we can. And I just wanted to remind any registrant that is on watching this tonight or watching it on the recording that you can claim 1 credit for 1 hour of participation. And when you do that, you must complete the prompted self-reflection questions in the registrant portal. So you would log on to the portal. We're actually going to show you the portal again tonight, and we will go through the portal, and then we can show you how to where that is, where you can log on. So I'm just going to go over the agenda and what we're going to be covering tonight. So we actually have quite a few topics. We're going to be covering a whole bunch of things. So first, we're going to be talking about our new name and our logo, and just kind of giving a little bit of a background as to why we made those changes. The big legislative changes that have been happening over the last couple of years, and how it has affected all the other things underneath this. So how it's affected our bylaws, how we've updated our standards of practice and our code of ethics, what practice guidelines are. We're going to be going over the website and the portal. We're going to be talking about trends and regulation, and then we're going to be opening it up for live questions and next steps. So quite a lot to cover tonight, but we hope that everything goes smoothly. Okay, I'm going to get started with our new name and our logo. So before we begin, I'm going to, we're going to run through a little bit of a video. This video is found on our homepage. So some of you may have seen it and some of you haven't. So we're just going to play it now, and then I'll talk about our name and logo. Perfect. So if you want to see that video again, it is on our homepage, and we use it not only to inform registrants about who we are as a college, but also the public and our stakeholders when they visit our website. So just a bit of a background about a college. So just so that we're all on the same page. Many people think a college is an educational institution, and that's definitely not what we are. We're actually an organization that is legally charged with serving the public interest by regulating the practice of a profession, and in this case, it's the dental hygiene profession. So our role is to protect the public from unsafe practice, and we have to hold registrants of the profession accountable for the care they provide. So every single healthcare provider in Alberta belongs to a regulatory college. And so as a dental hygienist, we're your regulatory college. Next slide. So why did we change our name? So there's a couple of reasons why. One of the things that kicked us off was Bill 46. It was one of the legislations that required all colleges in Alberta, all regulatory colleges in Alberta, to completely separate the regulatory college from the professional association responsibilities. So there were actually quite a few colleges in Alberta that held both mandates, where they were both a college and an association. So most of those colleges went through a name change as well. We were not one of those colleges. We legally, underneath the Health Professions Act, were strictly a college, but operationally we maintained a few association responsibilities. For example, the Minister of Health allowed us to negotiate a fee schedule for government programs, which is traditionally an association responsibility. So really, we thought about changing our name. A lot of other colleges were changing at the same time, and for a variety of reasons. One of them was that we continued to get confused. There was continued confusion between us as the CRDHA and the CDHA as the National Association. And so we would often get phone calls saying, we want to talk to our association, and or vice versa. CDHA was getting lots of phone calls that should have been directed to us. So the acronyms are so close that we thought it might be a good idea to separate and distinguish ourselves a little bit. It was also an opportunity for us to rebrand so that everybody knew that we were 100% a college. So we had to divest every association responsibility. And it was an opportunity for us to say, we've done that, and moving forward, we're 100% a college. It also gave us an opportunity to modernize our logo, which I'll talk about in a second, and develop a fresh new brand that resonated with key stakeholders. So how did we go through this process? This next slide, please. Thank you. So we had to go to council, and we talked with them quite a long time ago, and they approved the decision to rename the college with a brand new logo. And then we sent out a request for proposals. So essentially, we're asking for proposals from multiple vendors, and we received, I think it was about 8 to 10 vendors that put their name forward to want to work with us. And we ended up choosing Insight Strategies, which was a local Edmonton company, to help us with this change. Insight went through quite a significant process where they did an environmental scan of other regulatory colleges, not just in Alberta, but across the country. We held stakeholder engagement sessions, and through a lot of that process, they came up with the creation of the new logo and the brand, and then we went back to council and they approved the new name. Along with that whole process, we decided to advance our website. So we are already going to be changing the logo and the name, but we had been hearing that our website wasn't necessarily working as well as we wanted it to. And so we took the opportunity to update our website as well. And so this is about 2 years of work that went into this. On March 31st, so just a month ago, the new Health Professions Act and the regulations came into effect, and we only 5 days later launched the new name, our logo, and the website. And so you would have received an email expressing this new change. So I want to talk a little bit our college values and our brand and all the things that went into our name. The next slide. So values define what the organization cares most about. And so they provide a common purpose that all employees and council and our committee members should understand and follow. Once values are defined, it helps employees of the college understand the behaviors that are expected from them and what will lead to success in our roles. So council sets the values for the organization, and a few years ago they set out 4 really important values. And so one of them is being accountable. So their expectation is that we are accountable to our stakeholders, primarily the public and to government. Another value is being transparent, which means that we're always honest and open about our regulatory processes. This is the main reason why we don't actually have a private side to our website anymore, and most information about the college can be found directly on our website. So not only for registrants, but also for the public. Another value is collaboration, or being collaborative. So the expectation is that we do not work in a silo, we work with other colleges. We also work really closely with our Alberta Federation and our National Federation on joint projects. So we're always looking for opportunities to work with other colleges. And then finally, our last value is working with integrity. So we really try to promote an environment of trust by demonstrating consistent, fair, and honest communication and behavior. So those are our core values of our organization. But the words on the right-hand side of the slide are words that are linked to our brand. So these are words that stakeholders should think or feel when they interact with the college. You'll see that a few of the branding words overlap with our values, but a few of them are a little bit different. So for example, part of our brand is to be more accessible. That means we're continuously working on improving our communication processes with stakeholders and registrants. And part of the reason why we sent out a communication survey a couple months ago. Another brand word is committed. And so we're committed to always improving our regulatory processes so that we are keeping up with the changing environment and not falling behind. Regulation is changing really, really quickly, which we're going to talk about towards the end of the presentation. And so we are really committed to keeping up with the changing environment. Another thing that we strive towards is always being professional. So as a regulatory body, you may not always like the answer when you email us or call us, but we work towards always interacting in a professional manner. So our expectation from you as a health professional is that you also communicate professionally, not only with us, but with your patients and colleagues and employers. And so professional is really important when we talk about regulating a health profession. So next slide, thank you. So this is a little bit of the story around our new logo. So many of you will remember that the former CRDHA logo was often referred to as a flower. So that's in the upper left-hand corner. However, this logo represented the ADPI process of care model that our current practice standards are built around. You're still going to find the ADPI model in the Entry to Practice Canadian Competencies for Dental Hygienists, which are the entry-level competencies that all dental hygiene schools across Canada teach to. So that's that logo at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. However, we as a college have moved away from using the ADPI model into standards of practice, and we're going to be talking about the standards of practice here shortly. So because we moved away from the ADPI model, we wanted to update and modernize the logo along with the new name. So our current logo is made up of two separate parts. The dark blue top part represents a covering similar to an umbrella, which represents our mandate of protecting the public. The light blue part is a smile, which represents positive experience with both the college and registered dental hygienists in Alberta. So when you put those two parts together, they form a shield, which represents the college as a trusted authority in regulation. The two parts also form a stylized mouth, which is the viewpoint of dental hygienists when they are working on a client. And finally, when the two parts come together, like they did in the video we just saw, it shows collaboration or connections between the profession and the college that regulates the profession. So although it looks like a simple logo, and it is simple, it actually has quite a few components to it and a lot of meaning towards it. We also wanted to note that although the blue is the primary color of our logo and on our website, we have a few secondary colors that you'll find on our website. One of them is purple. So purple is traditionally the color of the dental hygiene profession. And the other color that we use on our website is lime green. And those are colors that you find in the dental assisting and the dentist regulatory colleges. So we wanted to bring those other colors in along to show that we are collaborating and we're, partners in regulation. And finally, you may notice that the ACDH letters in the logo are not black, but they're actually a dark silver color, which represents the silver colors of scalars. So everything that you see in our logo and our website has meaning behind it, even if it's super subtle. So in the end result, let's wait for the slide to turn. The end result is that we have a new name, we have a modernized logo, and we have an updated website. And all of these tools are used to support our vision of regulatory excellence and our mandate of public protection. So I hope that helps kind of explain a little bit about why we changed and the meaning behind our logo and our name. Okay, so I'm going to get into a couple of the legislative changes. I'm going to kind of go through it a bit quickly because it's not the most exciting thing that we'll be talking about tonight, but I think it forms the basis for all of the changes that we have seen so far. So many of you know that the Health Professions Act, the orange, the button in the orange, that is the legislation that contains the rules for regulating all health professionals in Alberta. The Act directs both the college and it directs you as regulated health professionals in how to regulate your profession in Alberta. So that is essentially the master legislation. Underneath that are regulations. And so we have the dental hygienist profession regulation. These are rules specific to the dental hygiene profession in Alberta. So this is where you're going to find information specific about our college and about your profession. Here's where you'll find information about registering for the first time in Alberta and renewing your practice permit. We also have a brand new regulation. It's called the Health Professions Restricted Activity Regulation, and it's new and it just came into effect at the end of March as well. And this is where you're going to find a list of restricted activities that each health profession is permitted to do. So this information used to be found in the Government Organization Act, and it was transitioned into a regulation that now sits under the Health Professions Act. So if you wanted to go and see what a physiotherapist can do, or what a dentist can do, or what a doctor and nurse can do, that's where you'll find the list of restricted activities for each of the professions. The Health Professions Act is a 328-page statute, and I doubt that many registrants have read the whole thing or any of it at all. However, we do have a new section on our website, and I wanted to point out it's under legislation, and it's called Legislation Simplified, and it pulls all of the relevant sections of the Health Professions Act and the regulations that apply directly to you as registrants. So when you go to this page, you're going to find information from the Health Professions Act and the regulations on things like advertising or continuing competence or mandatory registration or practice permit renewals or reporting requirements. And essentially that is the language from these documents that pertains specifically to you. So it's probably a good thing to go and check out at some point. And if you're ever curious about why we do things a certain way at the college, you're probably going to be able to find your answer by taking a peek at this legislation, as almost everything that we do is legislated by the government. So next slide. So we've seen some pretty significant changes to the Health Professions Act because of Bill 46. These are not all of the changes, but they're the most significant ones. Bill 46 was introduced in 2020, and it's the most extensive set of amendments to the Health Professions Act in 20 years. And it's the fourth major regulatory reform for colleges under the HPA in the past 2 years. So there's been lots and lots of legislation changes. Basically, what Bill 46 did was amend the Health Professions Act and the regulations, which meant that every college also had to then amend their bylaws and some of their standards of practice. So as I just mentioned, the restricted activities for health professions in Alberta were moved from the Government Organization Act to the new regulation. There's also wording that got put into the Health Professions Act that enables colleges to amalgamate, which I'm going to talk a little bit later on at the end of the presentation. And then the requirement to fully separate the operation of regulatory colleges from professional associations. So these are some of the really significant changes that happened to the HPA. And then there was changes to our regulations as well. So next slide. So the changes to the regulations, it used to be our regulations, the dental hygienist profession regulation used to be a fairly significant document, and now it's only about 3 pages. So we saw quite a lot of the rules that were found in the regulations moved. And so many of them moved from the regulations into the Health Professions Act. or they moved into our bylaws, or they moved into our standards. So there was lots of movement. So most of the language that was previously found in our regs are now in the Health Professions Act or the bylaws. And the reason for this is that when you move language out of regulations and into the Health Professions Act, it standardizes regulatory processes for all of the colleges, so all 29 colleges. So there's quite a bit more standardization that was happening because of this. And once language is put in the Health Professions Act, that's what all colleges have to follow. And then by moving language out of the regs and into bylaws also provides the colleges with a bit more flexibility. So we have more flexibility with our processes because it's a lot easier to update bylaws than it is to update regulations. So there is a little bit of a more agility for us to make some changes to our processes. We also saw that all of the continuing competence program information was moved out of our regulations into a new standard practice, which Nicole is going to talk about right away. So let's chat about bylaws. So what are bylaws? Bylaws are a set of rules and they're made by council, and our bylaws contain a whole bunch of rules specifically around the processes for council. How do you get appointed to council, and how many terms can you have, and what's quorum? What happens if there's a conflict on council? So there's lots of rules around council. Also, you'll find a lot of new language around registration and continuing competence, and rules pertaining to professional conduct and what we can publish on our website. So next slide, please. There's been lots of changes to the bylaws. So for anybody who's really into bylaws, you will have noticed that there have been so many changes to the bylaws over the last couple of years. And essentially what we're seeing is that a lot of the language that pertained to associations was removed. So the removal of the annual general meeting and special general meetings, the removal of the requirement for the CDHA membership. We switched terminology from president to chair, and we removed the past president. Typically, a president is associated with an association, not a council or a board of directors. We shifted from elections to nominations, and we changed our fiscal year. And also the composition of council changed. So we used to have 75% regulated members and 25% public members, and now it's 50-50. And that was because of Bill 30. So that was a change that was legislated by the government, but we're quite happy to be having lots of our public members with us. There was registration requirements, statutory committees, and publishing complaints, all language changes that have happened in the bylaws. And also one of the big things that you'll notice is that now we've added in language around registering consultation. So anytime we change the bylaws moving forward, it's going to go out to you as registrants for feedback. So you will start to see when the bylaws change, you'll get an email saying you have 30 days or whatever the timeline is to provide your feedback on the changes to the bylaws. One of the things that I wanted to highlight in this slide was about publishing complaints. And so in the spirit of transparency and the modernization of regulation, we're actually going to be publishing more information about our complaints. So we have to publish information on our website if a complaint goes to hearing. But what we're going to be doing now is publishing more information if it doesn't go to hearing. So if there's an agreement made between the complainant and the registrant, and it was done by an informal resolution, we can now post that on our website, probably without the name of the registrant. And the reason why we're moving in that direction is for education. So the more information we can put about our complaints process and what we do, the more education you as registrants get about your profession. And so that's a pretty big change. A lot of colleges are moving in that direction. The nurses, the registered nurses are leading the way in that area. So that language, those rules are also provided in the bylaws. So those are the really big changes when it came to the Health Professions Act, the regulations, and the bylaws. And now I'm going to pass it over to Nicole, who's going to be talking about our standards of practice and code of ethics.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole, and I'm one of the compliance advisors with the college. One of my main roles has been to work on updating the college's standards of practice. So over the next few slides, I'm going to go over what the standards are, why they exist, and then a bit about the new standards of practice and the consultation process that we've been undergoing. So the standards of practice set those minimum levels of professional behavior and conduct for regulated health professionals. It's your responsibility as a dental hygienist to really understand your college's standards of practice and adhere to them in your practice of dental hygiene. It's actually listed in the Health Professions Act that if you contravene or if your performance is below these standards, it can be considered unprofessional conduct. The Code of Ethics is another really important document that sets the permissible professional behavior and conduct for you as a regulated health professional. Again, it's your responsibility to know, understand, and adhere to the college's Code of Ethics and apply these ethical principles to your professional practice. So ultimately, why do we need standards of practice and a Code of Ethics? Well, it's because it says so in our legislation. A college must provide direction to and regulate the practice of the profession. The college must establish and maintain and enforce standards of practice for the regulated profession, and the college must establish, maintain, and enforce a code of ethics. This means that every single college has these documents for their own profession, and you need to follow yours as a dental hygienist. These documents are on our new website. They were on our old website as well, but this is where you can find them on the website on acdh.ca. If you go into regulatory documents, you'll find a lot of important information, but you'll find your code of ethics and your standards of practice here. Salima is going to go through the website a little bit later, but I wanted to highlight that this is where you can find these documents. So this is what you should be familiar with. This is our current practice standards, and they're located on the website right now. These are the standards that you are held to. The next slide also shows the current code of ethics. And again, a document that you should be super familiar with. It's been around for a long time, and this is what you need to follow in terms of ethical principles. Now we get into a little bit more exciting stuff. We have new standards of practice, and they have a different format. So I want to go through the format of these standards. We did circulate standards of practice, and I realize this is probably way too small to read the text on the actual standard that's on this slide. But I want to go through the new structure of the new standards of practice. So you would have seen that these were circulated last summer for consultation. And there's actually 3 of these standards are now on our website and in effect in this new format. They follow a consistent format. So we've got the standard statement. Every single one of our new standards has a standard statement. It clearly describes the legal and professional expected level of performance. So it's an overarching statement for the standard. Then it's followed by performance expectations, which are a list of the actions that must be demonstrated to indicate how that standard is actually met in practice. These expectations are not all inclusive, nor are they listed in any particular order of importance. The last section, which is really significant and new, is the client expectation. So this describes the outcomes that clients may expect when a dental hygienist meets the standard. The college exists to ensure that the care you provide is in the public interest. So having this clear statement puts the client into our standards, and it lets them know what they can expect when you're meeting your standards of practice. The Code of Ethics is also being revised. It's not in effect yet, and I'm going to go through the process of consultation and where all the standards are at and the Code of Ethics. So there was a new Code of Ethics also circulated last summer. Overall, it's a little bit shorter document. You're held generally to the same ethical principles, but it's been improved for clarity and simplicity. And each principle has a list of associated responsibilities that clarify how you apply the Code of Ethics in practice. So why are we updating the standards? Well, we needed to make some changes with Bill 46, as Amy discussed. We really wanted to modernize these documents in alignment with best practices, regulation changes. We wanted to increase consistency with other health professions. We wanted to make them more user-friendly. We wanted to include that piece on what the client can expect from their care with a dental hygienist. And we wanted to make them easier to update in the future. So they are a list of standalone standards that if one needs to be revised, it needs to be updated, we need to respond to new things, then we can do that. And I touched on the Code of Ethics a little bit already. It's really been updated to be more clear, easy to understand. There used to be a lot of, or there is currently, because it's not in effect yet, there's a lot of repetition and redundancies between the Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice, and so we cleaned some of that up. And we moved certain pieces that you used to find in the Code of Ethics. Once there's a new Code of Ethics, you won't find advertising there, for example. Advertising will be moved into its own standard of practice. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the consultation process that the college went through and where we're at. So the college underwent a really thorough process in revising the Standards of Practice and Code of Ethics in alignment with the requirements of the Health Professions Act. Anytime a college changes its standards or code of ethics, the college is required to go through consultation. So we have to seek the feedback from registrants, and we also need to send it to government. So step one, council did review the drafts before they were sent for consultation. These initial drafts were also reviewed by the college's competence and registration committees, and they were built by doing a really comprehensive scan across other health professions and across other provinces. Then we moved on to step two. The consultations were open for 2 weeks per standard over the summer. They're open for about a total of 3 months, rolling through different standards and dental hygienists, and we opened it for other feedback as well from the public to provide their comments on the standards. After consultations closed, this feedback was reviewed by the college and incorporated when appropriate. After that, we revised them and sent them to the government. So you'll see that step 4 is highlighted. That's where most of the standards are right now. There are 3 standards that have gone through the whole process because there was a different, faster government timeline to respond to Bill 46. So we had to get 3 standards through that process more quickly, and they're on the website now. They are the Restricted Activities Standard, the Supervision of Restricted Activities, and the Continuing Competence Standard of Practice. And those are all on the next slide. So those 3 have they're in effect. They've been approved by council. Make sure that you go on the website and you read those standards because you are expected to adhere to them and meet those expectations regarding restricted activities, supervising restricted activities, and the continuing competence program. On the next slide, we've got the whole list of draft standards of practice that we are still waiting on government feedback for. Once we receive that feedback, we can move on to revising these, and then eventually council will approve them and they'll go into effect as well. So during the consultation, we sent out a total of 23 standards, 1 code of ethics. Depending on the standards, some standards got more feedback than others, but we got between 1% and 3% of the total population of dental hygienists in Alberta responding to each survey, and these surveys were open for 3 months. You hopefully received emails over that time prompting and reminding you to give us your feedback because it really does matter. The feedback we got back, most hygienists who gave us feedback have been practicing for more than 15 years, and most worked in clinical settings, but there were respondents who worked in education, public health, and in research settings. So on this slide, we heard that dental hygienists agreed with the standards and code of ethics as they were written. The vast majority of the responses we got were in agreement with what was written. There was some suggestions for content to clarify or add, but there really wasn't a whole lot that people indicated was missing or was unclear. So that was really great to hear. We did hear some specific themes though as well in the feedback. So it's important to note that we didn't hear disagreement with the standards. We heard that there were some potential challenges with adhering to them in their practice. So these were things like not enough maybe autonomy or decision-making authority in their clinical environment, the amount of time they get in practice, the issues of working in a profit-driven practice, and that then sometimes when there's discrepancies that occur between the standards for dental hygienists and those for other health professionals, the employer's expectations might appear to supersede the dental hygienist professional requirements. There was also, I want to add, comments on adding more equity, diversity, and inclusion to the standards in a more prominent way. So how do we respond? We updated those standards and the code of ethics to improve the clarity. We adjusted the glossary and enhanced it so that it clarified the concepts more. We're working on ongoing, I keep saying online when I say ongoing and guideline together, ongoing guideline development to ensure that dental hygienists have a clear understanding of how to comply with the standards and code of ethics. And we also identified topics and educational opportunities that can be built in the future to support dental hygienists. So at this point, our next steps, we have to wait for the government feedback before we can proceed with the rest of those standards. And once they're in effect, you'll be expected to read and understand these new standards and the code of ethics. I have added a couple slides on guidelines as well. One of the things that came out of the consultation was that dental hygienists would benefit probably from more guidelines, more supportive documents that explain how to meet the standards of practice. So I'll have you go to the next slide. Great. Guidelines. So these are not equivalent to standards generally. Guidelines are the professionally accepted means by which the dental hygienist can achieve compliance with the standards and the code of ethics. They are dynamic documents. They have a lot more details than the standards of practice. They reflect current best practices, and they're more specific and related to specific scenarios or topics of practice. I will note that in some cases, the practice guidelines do have the same force and effect as a standard and must be complied with. So any guideline that uses the word must means that that guideline is mandatory. So on the next slide, I've got a list of examples here of standards or guidelines that the college is working on because of the consultation that we went through and the topics that were identified that we should develop guidelines on for the profession. All right, so that's standards and guidelines. I'm going to pass it over to Salima, and she's going to speak on continuing competence.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicole. So my name's Salima. I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs at the college, and I'll be sharing some information with you regarding continuing competence and going through the standard of practice. And then I'll also walk you through our website and portal before I pass it back to Amy, I think. So what is continuing competence? So health professions engage with the public in what we refer to as a social contract, and that's where health professions are granted the rights and privileges to oversee and practice the profession. And in exchange, the expectation is that these professionals will provide care to the public in a safe, competent, and ethical manner, meaning that you need to put the interests of the public ahead of the interests or needs of the profession. Therefore, for us to make sure that registrants are developing knowledge and skills and providing high quality services to the public is really crucial to that social contract with the public. And it also means that a continuing competence program is a really important part of self-regulation. On the next slide, so in the Health Professions Act, or the HPA, the definition of competence is the combined knowledge, skills, attitudes, and judgment required to provide professional services. This is a really key part of the framework that governs you as a self-regulated professional. And the HPA also identifies oversight of registrant continuing competence as one of the key roles of a regulatory college. In the literature, continuing competence is also similarly discussed as a combination of knowledge, skills, abilities, and judgment of a professional that can be applied safely and ethically to their practice of the profession and adjusted within their practice environment over time. So this means that continuing competence is affected by the context of each professional's practice role and your practice environment. For example, continuing competence will look very different for someone who works primarily with children in schools as compared to someone who might be working in a long-term care facility, or someone who's working in a rural community might require different learning and competency to meet the needs of their clients compared to those who might be working in urban centers. So why do we need a continuing competence program? Well, the simple answer is that it's a legal requirement in the Health Professions Act. And Section 50 of the Health Professions Act states that the college must establish a continuing competence program within its standards of practice. And that program includes professional development and may also include other components such as practice visits, exams, interviews, and other assessments of competency. So earlier this year, and as a result of Bill 46, some things changed with respect to the continuing competence program. So the CCP, or continuing competence program, has always been required, but the legal provisions related to the CCP were moved from the dental hygienist profession regulation into the continuing competence standard of practice. In accordance, the previous document that we referred to as the continuing competence program and rules was updated, and we're now referring to that as the continuing competence program manual. And these changes all came into effect on April 1st of this year. At this point, I'll go through an overview of the continuing competence standard of practice. If you want to follow along or review it in more detail on your own later, you can access it through our website at the link on your screen. If you go to the continuing competence page on our website and then click on the continuing competence program box, which is circled in green there, and on the next page that comes up, you'll see two buttons, one that says Continuing Competence Standard of Practice, and the other that says Continuing Competence Program Manual. So when you click on the first button, it'll take you to the Continuing Competence Standard of Practice document, which on the next slide, it'll look kind of like this. So it'll be a 2-page document that looks, as you can see on your screen, and I'll just take you through some key components of this standard of practice, just a reminder that it is already in effect. So the first part is the standard statement, and that sets out the minimum expectation of all registered dental hygienists in Alberta. So you are required to participate in the continuing competence program in order to maintain competence and enhance the provision of dental hygiene services throughout your career. The standard statement is then followed by the performance expectations section, which defines what you're required to do in order to meet this standard of practice. Some of the key things to notice here are that you must meet the requirements of the continuing competence program as per the manual, and I'll discuss some things about updates to the program on a later slide. You must also keep your own records of completed activities for a minimum of 4 years. You are required to produce those records when they are requested for review, and you must participate in a competence assessment when required either by the registrar or the competence committee. And you will see that the standard of practice outlines that a competence assessment can include those things I mentioned earlier from the Health Professions Act, so practice visits, exams, individual assessments, or interviews. The standard of practice, this one is particularly written a bit differently from the others that Nicole talked about, as we were also required to outline the actions to be taken if a registrant were to fail to meet the requirements of the continuing competence program. So this includes things like denying your annual permit renewal, referring you to the complaints director, or imposing conditions on your permit. You also should keep in mind that you may be held responsible for costs related to competence assessments or any actions that may need to be taken. So the last piece to complete the continuing competence picture and to align us with the new Health Professions Act and the new standards of practice, we had to update the previous continuing competence program and rules document, which is now called the Continuing Competence Program Manual. You'll find this available on our website as well. On this slide, I've just shared the broad structure of sections that you'll find in the manual. So the first one is the introduction, which is followed by program activities. And the program activities identifies the components of the program, which are actually the next 3 sections of the manual. So the 3 components are program credit requirements, which is section 3, mandatory courses or learning activities, which is section 4, and competence assessments, which is section 5. You'll also notice that the learning activity categories are under the credit requirements section and that the numbers have changed in the manual. So the corresponding portal updates have been made. I think most of them moved from being section 8 to now being section 3. And when you go to submit a continuing competence activity in the registrant portal, you'll see that the numbering has changed. And also then section 6 outlines the actions to be taken if a registrant were to fail the requirements of the continuing competence program. So in terms of general updates to the manual, the reporting periods have not changed. So you do still need to complete a minimum of 45 program credits within your 3-year reporting period. We did adjust the required period for retaining your records, which was 3 years, now it's 4. We reorganized the headings and the content to improve clarity and flow. And throughout the manual, you'll see that we use the term registrant, which is the same as regulated member as referred to in the Health Professions Act. And we also shifted the language from the college approving credits to the registrant claiming credits, since our process has changed over the last few years and the college no longer approves every single submission. There's also some other important changes that I wanted to highlight for you today. Firstly, there's no longer a 120-day rule for submission of credits. So you can submit credits at any time within your current reporting period, but we do still encourage registrants to enter their continuing competence activities as soon as possible after completion. Practice hours are still part of the dental hygienist profession regulation in section 11.3, and it does still require 600 practice hours per reporting period. However, these are no longer included as part of the continuing competence program because of the legislative changes. In the subcategory of publications, specifically item C, the program previously allowed articles written and published in the college or other dental hygiene college or association publications to be claimed for up to 10 program credits. That item has been modified, and now those written articles can be published in oral health college association publications, so a little bit broader of category and not specific to dental hygiene, but they can only be claimed for a maximum of 2 program credits. For jurisprudence, the program previously only allowed it to be done one time only, and that's now been changed to allow a maximum of 2 credits per reporting period in recognition of the changing landscape of legislation and the importance that jurisprudence has to your practice of the profession. And lastly, CPR was previously in the unlimited category. That's been moved over to the mandatory education section, which means it is required for the CCP. You can also only claim 3 credits per permit year, and it's really important that you refer to the CPR policy, which we'll talk about a little bit later, for those specific requirements. Also, just a quick note that you can still claim credits for first aid courses, but not under CPR, so the first aid component will go in the unlimited section. There are also some key things that you need to know when you're claiming credits. So you do need to be able to justify that any of the activities that you report will have significant intellectual or practical content related to your practice of dental hygiene, to oral health, or to your professional responsibilities and ethical obligations. You also can't claim for activities that are part of your regular job or expectations of your regular provision of dental hygiene services. And you should be mindful of supporting documents that are required for each category. So make sure you read those in the competence manual. There are some of them that require specific documents or that a self-reflection must be submitted for. In addition, you may be subject to a review of records, so it's really important that you're keeping good records on your end. The college can seek additional verification, including confirmation of your attendance, participation, completion of the activities, or actual time spent. So for example, a course provider might suggest 4 continuing education credits for a course, but if you only actually spent 3 hours on the course, you are only permitted to claim 3 program credits, and you will need to be able to verify the time that you spent. The college might also institute random audits to validate participation in the program. And the Competence Committee has the authority to adjust the number and category of credits that are accepted for any reported activity. The standard of practice has also provided a framework through which the college can enhance the continuing competence program. So in the future, you may see more audits of program records, practice visits being introduced, and other competence assessments, as well as more opportunities for mandatory education. So please watch for opportunities for you to be able to participate in development and or implementation of the program as it evolves. And the other thing that we wanted to share with you is that we have invested in a learning management system. We're working on developing courses. So this is just a screenshot of kind of the page once you log in. Right now, we've got our jurisprudence modules that are being launched for registration, but this is where we will be housing future learning and education opportunities for registrants to participate in. Okay. So I think we gotta deal the sharing. Just gonna grab my screen. I'm gonna walk everyone through the website and the portal on my other screen here. So I just want to confirm that that is visible. Yes, okay, great. So if you haven't been on our website yet, this is our fresh new look. So it's acdh.ca. I'll start right at the top. So at the very top, you have Verified Dental Hygienist. This is where members of the public can come if they want to look up a dental hygienist. You can also look up any other dental hygienist. So if you click on that link, it'll take you to a search function. And you can type in either the name or the registration number and then hit enter, and it should search people for you. We also have a news tab and a contact tab. And right up here, you'll see the big purple button is how you access the registrant portal. So there is nothing, like Amy mentioned, our website is really facing the public. If you need anything specific to registrants, your continuing competence records, for example, or updating your contact information, you're going to do that in the portal, which I'll walk you through shortly. Just to go back to our homepage. So I'll take you through these parts here at the top. So there's the About section, the regulatory documents, registration and renewal, continuing competence, and complaints. So those are the big sections on our website. When you click on the About, you will see information respecting our mandate, purpose, vision, and the values that Amy talked about earlier. We also have some drop downs here. If you click on the pluses, you'll see some of these accordion style articles across the website. If you click on the plus, it'll drop down some more information for you, so you can have a read through the college's strategic plan right there. We also have information on the side about the college. So we have the history of the college. On the ACDH staff page, you can find information about who works at the college and some brief information about what is a registered dental hygienist. We also have information about council. So if you're ever looking for who our council members are, you'll find that on this page here. Again, we have drop downs to share their pictures. So you'll see our council chair Jody there, for example. And then we also have a meeting section. So if you're ever wondering when the next council meetings are happening, the dates are listed here. We also share council minutes and highlights. Just to note that minutes are posted after they've been approved. So they usually get approved at the following meeting and then they'll be posted. So there's a little bit of time before you'll see the meetings for the most recent, the minutes for the most recent meeting. So you can find that there. And if you ever want to observe at a council meeting, you can fill out the form at the bottom of this page to request to observe. We also have information about committees. If you want to read more about those, click on the links for council committees and legislative committees. And you can also access all of our annual reports since 2006 in this section here. Regulatory documents is a key area that you will probably be going to. I'll just highlight a few here. So under legislation, you'll find information about the Health Professions Act, links to take you to the information related to that. There's also information about the regulations that were spoken to about before. You'll find our advanced restricted activities policy and as well FAQ page for any restricted activities as well. And there's also other legislation that affects your practice, like privacy legislation or occupational health and safety, and you'll find some information and links to those on this page as well. So a good idea to familiarize yourself with that particular page. And if we go back to regulatory documents, you'll find bylaws and code of ethics. If you click on each of these pages, it'll take you to a button for those documents. And then standards of practice. This is a fairly important page as well. So our practice standards are in here. You'll also find 3 standards of practice that Nicole referenced that have been approved as of April 1st. So you can access those here. And then you go down further, you'll see the practice guidelines that you should be familiar with. And then we also have our infection prevention and control guidelines for our college. You can access that through this button here. And we also have some FAQs that tend to come in quite frequently for us. So we've got an FAQ page for the infection prevention control guidelines. And then we also have policies. So you'll find our CPR policy and our professional liability insurance policy under this tab. We have a page on practice resources. So this is where some of the questions are also covered in terms of things like laser use, dental hygiene practices, supervising other professions. So you can find some common questions in that area under practice resources. Under registration and renewal, so you're already registrants most likely, so registration information and initial registration apply to people who are not registrants at this time usually. If you ever leave the register or go to non-practicing and want to come back and practice dental hygiene, you'll need to look at the reinstatement and transfer page. Advanced restricted activities is a really key one. If you take any courses that would provide you with the advanced training and skills for any of these 5 advanced restricted activities on the screen, it's really important that you get authorization from the college before you practice those. So you'll find our advanced restricted activities policy here and an application form for that to apply for authorization. Just a key note that you have to apply within 6 months of having completed the education. So don't forget about this page. And our application will hopefully be integrated into our registrant portal soon. So you'll find a link we'll update here later. Also on our registration renewal page, there's information about courtesy registrations. We do have a renewal tab right now, which is kind of short right now, just some basic information, but when renewal rolls around, we will have much more information for you on there so that you know how to get prepared for renewal and you can access renewal. If you need a letter of good standing, so if you're ever moving to another province, for example, they will require a letter of good standing from us. You will click on this box and fill out our form to request a letter of good standing. So you can do that right from our website. And then we also have our fee schedule, so you can take a look at that on our website as well under registration and renewal. In continuing competence, as I showed you earlier, you have access to the continuing competence program here. We do have a page with some FAQs about continuing competence, and there are a few webinars available on our website if you're looking for continuing education courses to complete. And then we have our complaints page. So the first one identifies all the information about what is part of the complaints process, what happens. There's a lot of information here for someone who might need to file a complaint. So that could be a member of the public or another health professional, for example. There's a page specifically for where they can submit a complaint. So that's right here, it's just a form. We also have a page for a hearing schedule. I don't think we have any right now. And then we have a page around complaint decisions, and you can take a look at those. So that's it for the website, and I'll switch over to the portal. So when you click on the portal login, you'll be taken to a login page. It didn't take me there this time, but you'll see it. I'll bring up the slide after. I'll get Holly to bring it up. But you'll see once you log in, it'll take you to your page. This is a test registrant. And so once you log in, you'll see these tabs at the top. So you should see general, which is where your personal information is. If you need to update any of that, there is a name change request form, an email change request form, or an update registrant contact over on the side on the links. So if you ever need to update any of that, you can just do that right through the portal. And then you can also see any announcements that we have. So this is just information about the continuing competence program, and we'll update this from time to time. If you need to print your practice permit, you can do that right from the portal here. You can also access it, pull it up on your screen if anybody wanted to view it. And then the second tab is advanced restricted activities. So this provides you with some information related to advanced restricted activities. And if you have any that have been authorized, you'll see them listed towards the bottom. And if you want to apply for advanced restricted activity authorization, this will take you to the form at this point. And once we build in the advanced restricted activities, you won't be able to see this form right now, but you will once it's built into the portal. We also have the continuing competence tab, which I think most of you are familiar with already. And this is where you'll see your reporting period. It'll tell you how many credits you have left to complete before the end of your reporting period. You will see a summary of all the categories and what you've completed. There's also a link here to our continuing competence program manual for ease of reference. We also have this section on mandatory education. So right now CPR is the only mandatory education, and it will bring in your most recent completion date so that you know if you're running short of time and you need to book another CPR, you can see that right here. And then you'll have the details of all of the activities that you've done. At the bottom here, you can record a new continuing competence activity. We also have a practice hours tab. All right, just taking a second here. And so you'll be able to see your practice hours. There's a lot, this is a test registrant, so you'll see a lot for the same year. But you'll be able to see yours for each permit year. And you can submit a request for practice hours correction for any years in the past from your current reporting period. We also have an employment tab. This is where you can view and update your employment information. So you can see your active employment records. If you want to see all of them, you just click on this one here. Should come up. There's also a link on the side that says update employment information, so you can access that from there. And you'll see all of your employment records here. Education, other professional registrations will look quite similar to this. I'm going to skip that one, but payment summary is one that a lot of people ask us for. So this is where you can find your receipts for renewal, which is mostly what we get asked for. So if you're looking for your tax receipts, you'll see them in this column. We are building out letters of good standing, so you'll see this person has receipts for paying the $25 fee for that. So you can access that here. If you haven't paid, you'll see that it'll say click to pay. You can click on it, it'll take you to the payment page. And then we also have a library. And this is, we're building this out a little bit more at the moment, but there's some resources here for registrants related to continuing competence and practice ownership. So if you're interested in practice ownership, you can look in here for just some considerations and information. So it'll be right under there. So I will stop sharing that. Ollie, I think you can take over. Great, so that's the portal login page that you'll just see. And when you click on login, there's also login instructions at the bottom if you need help with logging in. So I think that's it for my part, and I'll be passing it back to Amy. Amy, you're still on mute.
Thank you. Thanks, Lima. We wanted to finish off this presentation tonight by talking a little bit about trends in regulation. So, and some of the most popular questions that we receive at the college from registrants. So one of the really key things that is happening right now is that we're hearing a lot about a countrywide shortage of healthcare workers. There's no specific data to support a labor shortage for dental hygienists in Alberta, but we are really affected by new legislation changes that are happening in other provinces that address these shortages. So as an example, if you hold a dental hygiene license in a province, so let's say you hold your dental hygiene license in Alberta, Ontario just released some new legislation, which means you can move to Ontario and start working as a dental hygienist using your Alberta license. You don't need to be registered in Ontario. In Nova Scotia, you still need to register, but they can ask very minimal requirements and they have 5 business days to process it. So what we're seeing is a change in legislation in terms of how dental hygienists, how healthcare professionals move across the country once they have a license. We in Alberta have the largest scope of practice in the country when it comes to dental hygienists. And so for us and for council, we're having a lot of conversations about labor mobility and how dental hygienists move across the country from province to province, and how we maintain the protection of the public while adhering to these legislative changes. So council's in quite a bit of discussion about this, and we wanted to just indicate this as one of the trends that we're starting to see in regulation. Next slide. We're getting a lot of questions about the new dental therapy programs. So many of you know that there's a new dental therapy program. It's opening, its registration is opened. Actually, I think it closed on May 15th, I think. But the program begins in August, and it's at the University of Saskatchewan. And the program is in partnership with the Northern Intertribal Authority, and it's teaching a 2-year dental therapy program. And so dental therapy is a profession that kind of sits between a dental hygienist and a dentist. So dental therapists can do restorations and simple extractions, etc. However, it's not currently regulated in Alberta. So we're getting lots of questions from dental hygienists saying, I want to take this dental therapy program, but right now it's not regulated. So even if you do your education, you can't work as a dental therapist in Alberta unless you're working for the federal government under Health Canada. So there is a section under the Health Professions Act, Section 25, that any regulated or any profession that wants to seek regulation needs to apply to the minister for recommendation of self-regulation, and they have to join an existing college. So there's not going to be any more new colleges starting up in Alberta. That's one of the changes under the Health Professions Act. So if dental therapists want to apply to be self-regulated, they would need to come to an existing college and work with the health minister to become self-regulated. So that's an answer that's a question that we're getting quite often. We wanted to address it in this presentation. Next slide. So we're getting a lot of conversations or lots of questions about amalgamation, and this was mostly because of a couple things. The Health Professions Act, the changes to the Health Professions Act has new language in it, and essentially what they've done is they've allowed amalgamation of existing colleges to happen. It's not forced, but they have an actual, it's section 25.1, where 2 or more colleges can propose an amalgamation through an application made to the health minister. In BC, you may have heard that the 6 oral health regulators in BC actually did amalgamate, and they're now called the British Columbia College of Oral Health Professionals. And this was a forced amalgamation that the government has required them to do. So at this current time, there's no colleges in Alberta who have amalgamated recently. But going back to the slides around our values, one of our values as a college is collaboration. And so we are looking and we are working with other colleges on opportunities to collaborate. And the infection prevention and control guidelines is a really good example of a collaborative effort that happened between us and 3 other oral health colleges. So we are pursuing not formal amalgamation, but collaborative opportunities with other colleges. We also collaborate really closely with the Alberta Federation and the National Federation. So we're working on national projects with the other dental hygiene regulators across Canada. So those are some trends that we're seeing in regulation. And I'm going to pass it along to Salima, who's going to talk a little bit about the trends that we're seeing in professional conduct.
Thank you. So there are some things that you should be aware of that are coming through professional conduct trends. One of the ones that we're seeing is challenges, violations of advertising. So product incentives, gift cards, loyalty points, those kinds of things are not permitted. We're also seeing reports, particularly of unprofessional communication by dental hygienists with patients, using inappropriate language, for example. So really just make sure that your communication with patients is kept as professional as possible. Make sure you're hearing them out and trying to come up with collaborative solutions. We are also seeing billing concerns where patients don't understand what they're being charged, or the fee schedule isn't very clear to them, and there's a lack of accountability. There are concerns being brought forward about informed consent. So, really make sure that you are getting informed consent, that you're documenting informed consent, that you're providing all the information that your patient needs. There are some issues with understanding of standards of practice and code of ethics and violations related to those. So make sure you've read over all of those and you're familiar with all of them. And there are also been some issues with interactions that have been unprofessional with the college. So those are kind of the trends that are coming forward through professional conduct issues. The other thing that I will talk to you about also is CPR. So the CPR policy is available for review on our website. If you go to the regulatory documents page that I showed you earlier and click on the policies box and on the policies page, you'll see that a button that says CPR policy, and that'll take you to a PDF of the CPR policy that's been approved by council in 2022. A few key things that you should make note of in regard to this policy if you haven't already. Online CPR is not acceptable, so your CPR must include a theory component as well as an in-person hands-on component for your skills practice and evaluation. There's also key competencies that need to be covered at a minimum, and you need to make sure that you have the right level of CPR. So usually a basic life support or a healthcare provider course generally meets the requirements. And also as a registrant, you are required to hold current certification at all times, meaning that there must be no lapse in your CPR certification. So just a reminder that you are accountable for your own CPR certification, and having a lapse due to the scheduling of the CPR course by your place of employment is not considered a valid reason for non-compliance with the policy. So if there is a lapse in your record, it could be identified in an audit, and that would remain on your record. And then practice ownership. So we often get questions from registrants who might be interested in opening a dental hygiene practice. You might have noticed that our website again has no longer a specific dental hygiene practice owners page. Any documents that are specific to registrants are now available within the registrant portal. So you just click on the library tab that I showed you and then click on practice ownership, and you'll find a document in there right now that provides you with some important information that you would need to consider before you start that journey. The subfolders have other documents that may be relevant to practice as well. And this library is really being updated regularly, so we'll be adding more documents as needed. And I think I'm passing it on to Nicole next.
So let's go back one slide. Great. I'd like to touch on a few practice issues. The compliance advisors at the college receive a lot of questions from registrants, and to support dental hygienists with some of these commonly asked questions, there are a few areas of our website that provide information on specific topics. In that regulatory document section of the webpage, you'll find FAQs, and you'll find resources on restricted activities, as well as more general practice resources. If you don't see a topic addressed, you can always contact the college, email us. I put the compliance advisor's email address here directly, and send in your questions, and we will continue to build resources that respond to the significant issues that dental hygienists require clarification on. On this slide, I've highlighted Botox and oral sedation because they're two popular topics that we receive questions about. As you can see, I've taken screenshots of these, and really the takeaway for Botox is that dental hygienists are unable to provide Botox in their dental hygiene practice for cosmetic purposes. The legislation in Alberta, specifically the profession's practice statement in the Health Professions Act, which defines what hygienists do, it restricts dental hygienists to assessing, diagnosing, and treating only oral health conditions. Other health professionals may be able to provide neuromodulators or dermal fillers based on the restricted activities that they can perform and the practice statement for their profession, which may be broader than ours. Oral sedation is also a really complex topic that registrants contact us about. We're working on further resources to support hygienists in this area. Client safety is the top priority, but I encourage you, if you're in a situation where you may be considering working on a client who is being administered an oral sedative, to consider the questions and the list of considerations that we've provided on this website. It's detailed. I'm not going to go into it now, but really considering whether it's safe and whether you have the competencies to handle that situation. The next slide is on IPC. We also, as compliance advisors, get a lot of questions about IPC. It is absolutely essential that you read and understand and adhere to our college's IPC guidelines. Those again are found on that standards and guidelines page on the website. There's also a really helpful FAQ section tied right to those IPC guidelines because it is a big document and we've clarified some of the frequent questions that we get. These guidelines were developed in collaboration. Again, collaboration is a big theme for the college with 3 other oral health colleges in Alberta. They're based on IPC best practices. They consider information from a lot of reputable resources and other regulatory colleges. With a subject matter expert was also involved in the development of these, along with focus groups from each of the colleges. I'd also like to emphasize that gowns are a piece of personal protective equipment that protect dental hygienists from spray and splatter. They also protect clients by preventing cross-contamination of microorganisms originating from the dental hygienist clothing. We've put a nice little video clip in here. Some of you may have seen the original one years ago. It's the If Saliva Were Red. It is a helpful video. I really encourage everyone to watch the new version of it. It emphasizes the risk of infection transmission in dental practice, the impact of gowns and other IPC measures in mitigating that risk. And we'll play just a little clip of it for you, but the full version can be accessed on our website in the IPC FAQ section. All right, so I'm going to pass it back to Amy for the last few slides here.
Okay, I think we're going to go to the next slide. Perfect. Communication survey. Many of you may have remembered that we emailed registrants in mid-March asking for your feedback on our communications with the college. This is the second time we've done this in the last couple of years. The survey, we received just under 400 respondents, and we are going to be sending out the survey results in an upcoming email. But we had some feedback on our website and some feedback on the portal. And I wanted to just say that while we were developing our new website, we did take a lot of the feedback from the survey into consideration as we were working at updating our website. So thank you very much for those who took the time to fill out the survey. We do use email as our primary method of communication. There were some comments in the survey about if the college could just call, that would be really helpful. We have over 3,600 registrants, and so calling is not going to be the most effective or efficient use of our resources. So email is our primary use of communication along with our website, but we have introduced texting this year, and we are only using texting when a message is really, really important. We did get some feedback in the survey that some of you aren't receiving the texts. And so I'd encourage you to log onto the portal and check to see if we have the most recent cell phone number that you have. Because if we don't have your updated cell phone number, then you're not going to be getting the text. But text will be used for really important communications like renewals open, or, we have, new standards that you need to check. So we'll use that one pretty infrequently. But like I said, we are going to be sending out the survey results in an upcoming email, and really appreciate the feedback that we received. The last slide is around fees and expenses. So I really wanted to we do get comments about what do our fees go to? And it's a very valid question. And I wanted to just, in the spirit of transparency, really be clear about where your practice permit fees go to. And so here is a list of all of our expenses, and I broke it down into percentages so you can see where your $5.99 goes to every year. So, and I will go through this in a little bit of detail. So most of this is operational. So about 1% goes to insurance. So we do need to have general office and property insurance. D&O and E&O is really important, especially for if you're a council member. It's a directors and officers insurance. And we also have costs for cyber insurance and travel insurance. So we want to make sure that all of our data is stored and secured and insured. We have levies, which means that we do pay the Alberta Federation and National Federation levies every year for those organizations to exist. We do put a bit of money towards communications. So about 1% goes towards communications, which would include the website and any software that we need. So survey software, Zoom, a Constant Contact. Constant Contact is the software that we use for sending out emails to everybody, and it comes with a fee. About 2% of the fees go towards meetings, and so there is meeting expenses for council and for committees, specifically accommodations, meals, travel, and the venue. We also spend about 2% on legal costs. So we don't have a lawyer on staff, but we do work with a few lawyers because our job is fairly legal. Most of the things that we do will require legal oversight. So we do spend a bit of money on lawyers. And so this is specifically around registration, continuing competence, our general operations, and anything that council has requested in terms of getting legal opinions. And so we do have some legal expenses that we spend the money on. About 4% goes towards professional conduct. So that is when we receive complaints and there's usually investigations or a hearing tribunal or any kind of training. So about 4% of the fees go towards that part of the business. And another 4% goes towards registration. And so most of this is around consulting and contractors. So we do contract out our program reviews. We do have to pay for our jurisprudence exam, and we do pay towards the Commission of Dental Accreditation, so CDAC. So there is an annual fee for us to participate with CDAC. So some of those fees need to go towards that. About 5% goes towards administrative fees. So this is basically like professional fees for our staff, any per diems. So if you're on council or committees, you do get paid a small amount to participate on those, and any kind of membership or subscriptions that we need to have when it comes to regulatory. So CNAR and CLEAR are two of the largest regulatory organizations where we get a lot of our education and a lot of our resources from. So there's some membership and subscription fees, and then of course professional development for all of our staff and council. 7% goes towards financial, and so we have a contract bookkeeper. We have to pay for an annual audit every single year, and bank charges take up quite a large chunk of this. So we receive payment to our college through credit card, but we also have to pay bank charges on top of that. This also includes any software. So we do have QuickBooks for our accounting system and Ceridium for our payroll, and then any CPP, EI, and WCB costs are all incorporated in that financial bucket. 8% of your fees go towards IT infrastructure. So any computer equipment that we need to operate our IT service providers, the database, the portal. So all of the IT systems that we have need to be supported, and that's where that 8% goes. And then 8% goes towards college operations. So the rent of our building, our lease equipment, our office supplies, printing, telephone security, pretty much anything we need to run the actual organization. And 10% goes towards continuing competence. And that would be a lot of contractors or consultants that help with developing our continuing competence programs, our learning management system, inspections of new dental hygiene practices, our audit, or educational development. So there's a lot of things that we're going to be investing in over the next few years, a lot in the continuing competence area. So about 10% will go towards that. And then, of course, salaries and benefits. So we're sitting at about 47% of the fees are going towards salaries and benefits. We currently have 11 staff members. And for a not-for-profit or an organization like ourselves, it's very typical to see 50 to 65% of the money or of the fees going towards salaries, mostly because we have to do the work. And so we do need staff to make sure that we're doing all the work that's required under our legislation. A couple quick notes, our practice permit fees have not increased since the 2017-2018 renewal, and every year council sets those. And so we do a really, really thorough look at the budget. We predict some of the expenses that we're going to be seeing moving forward, and then we look at the practice permit fee and we look to see if we need to increase that or not. And we've been doing a really good job of keeping it the same since 2017. If you're looking for some more detailed financial reports, you can find them in our annual reports. We have to have them. They're audited every year and they're on our website. So our annual reports contain our audited financial statements for every year. And just so that registrants are aware, we do have oversight through our Audit, Finance, and Risk Committee, which are made up of council members, but they do specifically look at our finances quarterly or more frequently, all of our policies, our risk, and our audit, and they really take a really good deep dive and oversight over everything what the college does. But all approvals still sit at the council level. The last thing I want to say about fees is we do have reserve funds, and so you may see a little bit of this in the audited annual reports if you do read them, and they are for specific things like we have a sustainability fund. That means that if something happens to the college and we can't collect any fees, we are able to operate for 6 to 9 months without having any issues. So it's a sustainability fund, and we want to make sure that we always have money there in case something happens. We have a legal fund and a professional conduct fund. So this would be if there was, let's say, a really big investigation that comes. We're not expecting it, but we have to look after it. We want to make sure that we have the funds to be able to have all the right people in place to be able to deal with a really thorough investigation, as that's what we have to do as a college. We're mandated to have a counseling fund. So this is basically if any patient comes to the college claiming Bill 21, so sexual abuse, sexual misconduct, they have a right under the Health Professions Act to access counseling, and it's paid for by the college. So we have to have a counseling reserve fund. So we're really, really good at making sure we're providing really good oversight and really tight budgeting, and council has a really thorough oversight into all of our finances. But we do get asked quite often, you know, where does our money go to? And it's not a secret, but we did want to share where those costs are going. Okay, so I'm going to just move on to the last couple slides. Jody, as our council chair, is going to wrap up this presentation tonight, and then we're going to see if there's any more questions from the registrants.
Great, thanks, Amy. And thank you to both you and your team for the effort, time, and professionalism that went into your presentation this evening. It's been highlighted tonight the role we all have as health professionals and the responsibilities that come with being regulated dental hygienists. We're all responsible for reading, understanding, and upholding our code of ethics and practice standards. You can access and review these items on the college website, as was explained tonight. And with over 3,600 registrants throughout Alberta, email is a key means of communication from the college. So please read these correspondences as they contain important information around the regulation of our profession. We all need to enhance and build on our competencies as dental hygienists. The 45-point requirement are much more than that. It's an opportunity to stay current, learn something new, and ultimately enhance our practice for ourselves and the public we interact with and support on their health journey. On behalf of the College Council, I would like to thank everyone who's joined tonight. And just as a note, remember that this presentation is available on the ACDH's YouTube site for anyone to watch again or for those unable to attend this evening. So I'll pass it back to you, Amy, to facilitate the live Q&A portion of the evening. Thank you.
So we're going to actually stop the screen share, and Nicole is going to share her screen, and we're all going to come off mute. This was our workaround for the Teams conference. And we will get us all up and running. Nicole, we can see your desktop. So we do have a question that came through around I don't text, and it's a very valid question. And I would just say that if we're going to be texting, we're also going to be emailing as well. So we don't just send out announcements through text. We would follow up with an email. Often we will post something on our website. Often we will follow up with something on our Facebook. So if it's a really important message, we're not just using text as a source of communication. It's text along with everything else that we would do. There's a question around how many active members are there. Slima, do you have the most recent number? I can kind of guess.
It's just over 3,700.
So we have just over 3,700 and just over 100 non-practicing right now, I believe.
I think we had a couple of questions come in about the portal and some people having trouble logging in. On the main page of the portal, you'll see a link that says login instructions. So try clicking that. There's some really comprehensive step-by-step instructions on getting in. If you're still struggling with that, please email us at info@acdh.ca and someone will try to walk through it. And usually it's pretty quick to fix. And if it's an issue that everyone's experiencing, sometimes that happens. It'll help us to just catch that and resolve it for everyone. But usually if you follow the instructions that are available there, you should be able to get through it. But we're happy to help you if you email us. It's sometimes we just have to troubleshoot your specific situation.
There's a question about practice permits. We will be having a new practice permit here shortly with the new name and the new logo. So we recommend, if you are printing it, to use high quality printer and paper. And we are going to be moving towards a different practice permit in the future when we get our database set up, where we'll be looking at having our advanced restricted activities and all conditions on all one permit. And so it will be tied directly to our database and pull in information. And so the permit will always be up to date on the portal. So, did you want to add anything else about the permit?
Yeah, we already have it with the new logo actually. So when you click on it, it'll have the ACDH logo on there.
There's a question about printing the annual certificates. Is it permanent or temporary? So the Health Professions Act actually states that you need to either have it available or have it visible. Those aren't the exact words, but that's essentially what it says, have it visible or have it available. And so any member of the public should be able to ask at any time to see your practice permit if it's not visible in your op, and you will need to have it available. Many people print it, put it in and frame it. Others just have it in a wall card. Others just use the website to show their proof of registration. So we're directed by the Health Professions Act in terms of having the permit either visible or available.
There's a question about taking an online webinar that doesn't provide a certificate, and if you can enter that time with the self-reflection. So yes, you could do that. You would need to fill out the self-reflection and just make sure that what you're taking meets the requirements of the continuing competence program. So you should be able to justify that it's relevant to your practice of dental hygiene.
So there's a question about prescribing. Will the prescribing hygienists be allowed to prescribe the HPV vaccine? That's a great question. So prescribing is an advanced restricted activity. So for those that take additional training, you can apply for your prescribing certificate through our college. You're currently only permitted to prescribe Schedule I drugs and listed under the restricted activities in the regulations, and HPV vaccine is not part of that list.
No, I will also add that administering a vaccine, prescribing and administering a vaccine is actually a different restricted activity completely from prescribing drugs that we don't have as dental hygienists.
Yeah, so if you do go on to the new regulations, you will see that some professions are able to administer a vaccine. Dental hygienists don't have that restricted activity. So the only way to get it would be to open up the regulations and then work with the government if that is something that we would do in the future. There's a question around, in what situations would you require a registrant to write an exam for continued competency? Does somebody want to take that one?
Sorry, did you say me? So we don't have exams built into the continuing competence program at this point. It's in the HPA as an option for us to include, but there may be situations where someone is unable to demonstrate competency, and the continuing or the competence committee might decide that they would like that person to take an exam to show that they're competent in a certain area, but that has not been developed as part of the continuing competence program at this point. So if and when that does come into play, I expect that we will provide more parameters and information about that.
There's a couple questions that have come in around the college working with the College of Dentists of Alberta. So it's the College of Dental Surgeons of Alberta, CDSA. And I would just like to say that all 5 oral health regulators meet regularly. We meet once a month. We either do it virtual or in person, and we talk very openly about what each of the colleges are working on. We look for opportunities to collaborate if it lines up with each of the college's strategic plans. We also go to each other's council meetings and present once a year. So we do see a lot of overlap, and even though all 5 oral health professions are regulated by different colleges, we are very much working together in terms of meeting regularly and talking and looking for opportunities to collaborate. There's a CPR question. Does anybody want to take that one? It's for the CPR being current. Is it the exact date to date, year, or current renewal year?
I can take that one. So it is within the last 12 months. So if you took CPR September 15th of 2022, then you will need to take it again before September 15th of 2023. So it's not based on the permit year, it's based on the last date that you took it.
And just to add to that, Salima, you can find that wording in the CPR policy, and I believe that is housed on our website as well.
Lim, I'm wondering if there's been a couple questions about, since there's no there's no certificate that we are provided at the end of the town hall, can we walk registrants through where to do the self-reflection? I think you might have mentioned it when you were showing the portal.
So when you enter a continuing competence activity, do you want me to like screen share? I can do that too.
That might be that if there's a few people asking, that might be really helpful.
Sure. I will take over for a moment here. Okay. Is that visible? Everyone?
It is.
Okay. This is still our test registrant. So when you go into your continuing competence tab and you scroll to the bottom, there's a record a new continuing competence activity. You click on that, it's going to open up a form for you. I hope. Okay, I'm logged in correctly. So your information will come in here, your current reporting period. And then you're going to enter the start date. So you can put in today's date for your start and completion. Your activity will fall into other activities approved by council registrar. And then you're going to type in, let's do an example here, town hall, presented by ACDH, and then Alberta College of Dental Hygienists as the sponsor. And let's say you're here for 2 hours. And then where it says, I will be uploading supporting documents, we don't have a supporting document for tonight. You are required to submit the self-reflection questions. So when you click no, it opens up the self-reflection questions for you. And you will fill these questions out. And then you will complete the certification, type your name in, and click submit. So that's how you will complete that form.
Perfect, thank you.
I have stopped sharing, so I don't think anybody's live. There we go.
Okay, so there's a question around for those who are already performing a restricted activity, for instance, local anesthetic, do they need to apply for authorization to perform this, or are they grandfathered in? Lima, do you want to take that?
Sorry, I'm just looking for the question. Those who are already performing a restricted activity, do they need to apply for authorization? Okay. Yes, everybody who wants to perform an advanced restricted activity of the 5 that were listed, so local anesthetic, nitrous oxide, oxygen conscious sedation, restorative, orthodontics, and prescribing, Schedule 1 drugs, you do need to have authorization from the college. You are not allowed to perform those advanced restricted activities without that authorization. So I would highly recommend that you contact us right away if you are currently doing this without that authorization. It's registration at acdh.ca, and we can probably discuss that further. But for any of those 5 activities, you must have advanced restricted activity authorization from the college.
And I can add one little piece to that is you can check that on your permit as well. You can check that in the portal, but it'll also be indicated right on your practice permit, which advanced restricted activities you are authorized to perform.
Yeah, you can also see it on our website. So if you go onto the Verified Dental Hygienist and you look yourself up, or if you're interested in seeing if someone else may or may not have it and you think they might be practicing without having the authorization, you can find all of the authorized restricted activities that each person who's a current registrant has on our website.
Okay, we'll just do a couple more. And as we said at the beginning of the presentation, if you do have follow-up questions, please email info@acdh.ca and or compliance the compliance advisors at acdh.ca, and we'd be more than happy to follow up with your questions. The Schedule 1 drug list. Where do I find the Schedule 1 drug list? Oh, perfect. It is in that new restricted activity regulation. If you go under dental hygienists, you will see our list of restricted activities, including the Schedule 1 drug list that dental hygienists are permitted to prescribe if they have the advanced restricted activity. So there's a bit of a question around audits. Did you want to talk about audits? It said, will it be random in practice audits? If so, is the auditor promoted by the government or the college? So we haven't necessarily fully completed the development of our audits, but we can share a few of the details with you.
Yeah, so we haven't developed a full audit process formalized in the CCP yet, but there is room to be able to do that. So they will likely be random audits where we will go through your continuing competence record, potentially ask for verification. It will likely be peer assessors or auditors. So the college would facilitate that. It would not be facilitated by the government. So you would have members of the profession that would be recruited to participate in the audit process, potentially, and then they would go through your competence record and identify any areas. If you're able to provide verification, that's great. If not, then it might be escalated to the competence committee, but we don't really have the full details of that. So it hasn't been developed yet, but when we do, we will certainly share that and give everybody a heads up for when we'll be starting.
Okay, and we'll just do one last question here, and it's around the 120-day time limit for submitting continuing education activities. Yes, this has been removed. So you no longer have the 120-day limit. You can log on at any time within your 3-year reporting period and upload your credits. We do really strongly recommend upon completion of a course or like this town hall to go in and do it quickly, especially if we're going to be moving into audits. But no, there's no 120-day time limit anymore. Okay, so I think we're going to wrap up for the evening. Again, this will be videoed. Our apologies for anybody that had a difficult time logging on at the very beginning. We will be looking at why that happened, and for our next virtual town hall, ensuring that the right links are used. We just want to thank everybody for sticking with us. It's been 2.5 hours. Well, since we first logged on, and we just wanted to thank you all very much, and we hope you found it helpful, and please email us if you have any further questions. And thank you, John, for attending, and thank you, Jody, very much, and all the other council members who were in attendance tonight as attendees.